I'm Megan Dorsey with collegeprepresults.com. Today we're going to talk about 2015 PSAT scores. Where can you find them? What's a good score? How could you use the report to get maximum benefit? And what do you need from that report? What can you ignore? If you have your own PSAT results, go ahead and grab them so you can follow along. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to look at a couple of things online, starting with an online sample from College Board. This represents a version of the paper copy of scores that you might get from your high school when you get your PSAT booklet back. College Board, with their great sense of humor, has given us I'm a B student, and we can see here that Ima took the PSAT. You might also get your online scores. I'm going to go over here to the collegeboard.org tab. If I go on their main menu to PSAT, you can see here in the middle it says Get PSAT Scores Now. Click on that. You can either sign in with your College Board account, or if you don't have one, create one, which will give you access to your online score report. Here we've got John Q. Public's report. One thing that's a little different between John and Ima, John took the PSAT 8-9. There are three versions right now of the test. There's the PSAT 8-9 for 8th and 9th graders, PSAT 10 for 10th graders, and the PSAT for 11th graders. Mostly, this information is the same, except for the score range. The PSAT 8-9 is out of a lower range total, 240 to 1440, than what Ima took as a junior, which is out of a total score range of 320 to 1520. These total scores are meant to be seen as equivalents to the SAT, which goes up to a maximum of a 1600. So let's start with IMS scores. The first thing we see are these big numbers here in the middle. I think most people are usually drawn to the total score, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The total score is really the adding together of two parts. The evidence-based reading and writing score, Ima got a 380 on a scale of 160 to 760. For most people, that doesn't mean much. Here's what you should do. Go right beneath it and look at the percentile. Now, don't confuse percentile with percent. This isn't the percent she got right. This is how does she compare to other test takers. In other words, out of 100 test takers, Ima did better than 18. That's kind of on the lower end, isn't it? As opposed to in math, out of 100, Ima does better than 47 test takers. That's what I would call average. It's right in the middle. She's better than about half the people taking the test, but has lower scores than the other half. Right there in the middle. The other thing we can look at to decide whether these numbers are good or not is she on track for college readiness? Right here, Ima's got barely at the end of the green, and it says, green check, you're on track for college readiness in math. In the yellow, where she appears in evidence-based reading and writing, she's close to, but not quite there. Anyone in the red zone, we know that that's a student who either is not prepared with the material or may have other factors that influence their testing. Maybe some problems with testing, learning differences, language difficulties to overcome. Either way, someone who's got a particularly low score in this red area knows that they're either going to have a very hard time when it comes to the SAT, or they've got a lot of work to do to bring up those scores. So Ima's kind of what we'd call a little bit below average here, right on average in math, and so her total score, when those are added together, puts her at the 28th percentile nationally. So compared to juniors, out of 100, she's scoring better than 28. We'll take a look at John. John's got slightly different results. We can see already that John's numbers are higher. Now, the report looks different just moved things around a little bit in the online version, which is why I wanted to give you both in this video. We can see John's total, already beating IMS at a 1200. He has a 630 in evidence-based reading and writing and a 570 in math. John is clearly in the green. He's on track for college readiness. And let's look at his percentiles. This is why I wanted to come over to the online version to do this. You get more information here. Nationally, John is somewhere between the 97th and 96th. Then you might say, well, what's the difference? Well, College Board is giving students this user percentile, here it is all the way across, comparing to other students who took the test. And if you read carefully, we can see what's average for this group on the PSAT 8-9 is a 447 in math and a 454 in reading and writing. So that puts John clearly here in the upper percentiles. But here's the other one. The next number that makes John look better, because the number's higher, is a nationally represented sample. And what this means is, if we compare John to all students of his age and grade level, not just those who took the PSAT, College Board estimates that this is where he would fall. Now, how they can estimate based on people who didn't take the test, I'm not sure, but the idea is these are numbers to get a general picture on track, not on track, and how competitive are you with your numbers. So that's an important thing to look at. Now, we're going to skip over a lot of this other stuff. We can see it online here in John's report, and we can see it in the middle of this booklet that IMS receiving. And we're going to go to the bottom of IMS score report, the last page, your question and level feedback. This is what you really want to spend time with. It's the gold nugget in the middle of your PSAT results. And what this is you can see, this tells us exactly how IMA did. In reading, the writing, math with calculator, math with no calculator, problem by problem, how did IMA perform? We can see in red the ones that she missed. Number 41 here, the answer was A, she put D. And then you get these little squares. Notice, this is the difficulty level. 1 square being the easiest, 3 being the hardest. It's good to know, are you missing easy, medium, or hard questions? The sub-score and cross-test score categories, that's the stuff we just skipped over in the score report. This is extra information that the College Board is trying to present. I don't know that this is something that's particularly useful to you. Go through your test booklet question by question and ask, why did I miss it? I see a couple things here. Down at the bottom of the writing section, IMA missed 3 of the last 4 questions. I don't know why that is. It could be that she didn't know it. It could be because those were difficult problems. It could be because IMA was running out of time. Maybe she circled the right answer in her booklet and bubbled it in wrong on her answer sheet. Who knows? There's so many reasons that students miss questions that you can't get a computer-generated report that can give you the same quality of information as you simply sitting down with your test booklet that you received back from your counselor at school and your score report. Spend an hour or two, look things over, and say, why did I miss it? What patterns do I notice? And how can I use this to help me improve in the future? John has the same information, but it looks a little different online. Here we have to go to the button that says Test Questions. Click on that and you'll see tabs for reading, writing language, math without calculator, math with calculator. We can see here that John missed in math with calculator 7 questions. Taking a look at them, you can see the breakdown. Notice how this math question is also categorized as a science question. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We can look, and although we might say, oh, it looks like John's missing some problem solving and data analysis questions, just by looking at that label doesn't give us the full answer. He needs to go back to the booklet and say, why did I miss them? Now online, you can sort things by difficulty, but really it's the same information, just with your ability to filter it. The information you gather by looking at your own test is much more valuable than what we see next over here on the Skills Insight tab. Well, John only missed one question in reading, which is why it gives him very few things to improve on. It says he's got a top score. But in math, he missed more questions, and it's giving all sorts of tips. Oh, when finding volume, extend understanding of area and surface area. John's doing better to go back and look at the questions individually and say, did I not know how to do it? Why did I miss it? Than to take these generic tips, which are automatically generated just by the questions he missed. Looking at things one by one will be much more insightful to him and to IMA than by going by these general improving skills suggestions. So let's talk about what you can skip over, in my opinion. We've got all of this test scores, cross-test scores, sub-scores. Colleges haven't been using this. It's extra information. And maybe it's helpful to you as a student or parent, but I'm going to tell you, I think some of it is fluff. Here's my favorite example. Remember we said analysis in science based on a math question? IMA might have an 18 on a score range of 8 to 38. Not because she doesn't know, enjoy, or perform well in science, but maybe she missed the reading passage questions that had a science theme, or a couple of those math questions that were on a science theme. So to make a generalization about a student's social studies or science abilities based on a reading, writing, and math test, I think is a little silly. The other thing is, as much as we'd like to say, oh, maybe we can make some generalizations here on our sub-scores, it is really more beneficial to you to say, question by question, what am I missing? Now, so we'll say that sometimes if you see a student who's doing great in all areas and has one that's really an outlier, much lower than another, we might identify, hey, maybe this type of question is giving you trouble, and that might give you a place to study. But for the most part, all these extra numbers in the middle aren't really going to be important to you and your testing or college search process. So I'm going to go back over here for John to his report detail, and I'm going to tell you how are we going to use these scores, what's going to be important. We can see already that John's doing really well, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't need to improve. Obviously, as an 8th or 9th grader, he's going to have a number of years taking the PSAT. He might choose to improve. And one of the best ways that you will guide your own desires for score improvement is to start taking these score numbers and comparing them to the colleges and universities on your wish list. Here's an easy place to start, whether John's in 8th or 9th grade or whether Ima's a junior getting ready to make her final college list. I'm going to go over to the College Board website. We can see up at the top in navigation the college search button, and I've already come here and pulled up a college, Albright College in Pennsylvania. You can read a lot about Albright, but what I'm going to do for this purpose is go over here to the left where it says Applying. I'm going to click on Applying, and it gives me a lot of information about academics, but what I'm really interested in is this SAT and ACT scores. I scroll down, and I can see the mid-range test scores of students who were admitted to Albright College. So if I remember Ima's scores correctly, her reading is lower than the mid-range of accepted students. Now, keep in mind, we are doing a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison because these numbers represent the old SAT test, which just had critical reading as opposed to the reading and writing evidence-based. But it's a good estimate, a good place to start. Ima's math score of a 480 is hanging on just barely to that low end of the mid-range. Does this mean Ima wouldn't get into Albright College? No. We know that there are lots of other important factors like the classes she's taken, her grades, her extracurricular activities, the essays, the whole application. But it does say, guess what, Ima? If this is one of your top schools, I'd really recommend you hit the books a little, study, practice, work on your skills so that you can get your SAT scores up a little higher. Now, we know John was already scoring above that, 630, 570. So if we look and we say, oh yeah, you know what, John's already even above the mid-range in both of these. Does that guarantee that John will be admitted? No. All of those other factors still apply. How's he doing with his grades and his schoolwork, his extracurricular activities? Does he put together a good application? But it does tell John, hey, I'm in the above average category. And I'm going to tell you, students who are looking for academic scholarships love to see test scores and grades above the mid-range. But let's say John's looking at another school. I'm going to go to my alma mater, Rice University. A little bit more competitive. I go again to the Applying tab on the left, come over and click SAT and ACT scores, and oh, we can see those numbers are higher. So John, who had a 630 in his reading and writing and a 570 in math, compares at Rice and says, oh, I was so high at Albright, I was getting maybe overly confident. I see that I'm a little bit below in both of these. Now, the good news is John's in 8th or 9th grade. He's got room for improvement, but it gives him an indication of how much he may need to study or improve. So I think that's one of the most valuable things you can use your PSAT score results for, deciding how much you need to improve, and doing that by comparing not just to the national percentiles, but to the colleges on your list. There's one final thing that I know families are interested in, at least some that I've talked to recently, and that's national merit scholarships. I'm not looking at John's report because national merit scholarships are available only to juniors. And so that would only be for Ima and her 11th grade PSAT. The National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, that's the PSAT, and that's why we see NMSQT alongside it, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, is going to be looking at this selection index number for students. Now, National Merit is only taking the top of the top, the highest test takers per state. And so we know that Ima's struggling in some areas, a little bit average in others, and so she's not going to be selected for this very high qualifying number for national merit. But a lot of families are asking me, hey, how do I know? Because last year's qualifying score was based on the old test. What should I expect with the new test? And what I'm telling people is, you can go look at the qualifying scores, which are done state by state. So look up your state for the previous year, and you can see how competitive it was. Some states have higher cutoffs than others. But this year, unless a student is in that top part, like a 227 out of possible 228, I'm saying we need to wait and see. Yes, I know there are a lot of websites out there and a lot of forums with speculation running wild. It's going to be higher, it's going to be lower, it's going to be about the same. Everybody's guessing. Just wait. Sit back and wait. I know it's going to be a number of months before National Merit makes their declaration, but don't discount your chances or get false hope based on pure guessing and rumor on the internet. So I hope that gives you some clear ideas of what to do with your PSAT scores, looking at score improvement, looking at college options, and possibly that National Merit Scholarship. If you'd like more information on college planning, please join me over at collegeprepresults.com.